So next in our Danbury Stadium series, we have Cleveland Municipal Stadium. This stadium opened in 1931 as one of the first purpose-built multi-purpose stadiums. Before this, you would either have teams play at purpose-specific stadiums, or you would have teams share like Tiger Stadium in Detroit or Forbes Field in Pittsburgh with the Lions and the Steelers, or even the Pitt Panthers. This would really start that forgettable trend of the multi-purpose stadiums where you really just would never get an ideal setup having two different sports fields in the same stadium, usually on the same field. So the Cleveland Indians would play at this stadium first, beginning in 1932, and they would make it their regular home until they realized that it just was too big for baseball. This stadium was near 80,000 in capacity, and for an entire baseball season, that just wasn't practical to fill that many seats. So only after, I think it was 2 years, they decided to only play here on weekends and holidays. Now, the Indians would begin playing here full time beginning in 1947, and this would be the team's offices. And on top, this Chief Wahoo sign still exists in a local museum. You can see in the picture there, just to show you how big it was sitting on top of the stadium. Now, this model is set to the football configuration, but you can still see the outline of the infield right there, the dugouts right there, and the field was so deep that they actually installed a wall right about here or so to cut off, so it would be, obviously you could be able to hit home runs because it was just going to be too deep to hit them way over here. You could see that this is quite different than the cookie cutter stadiums. This was not a cookie cutter multi-purpose stadium, so the layout was quite different, and you could see the views for football. You would just have this massive dead zone here, here, and even here. So one thing to remember, the Browns were not the first NFL team to play at this stadium. The Rams actually were, and they would play here from 1937 to 1945. And the Browns would start off as an AAFC team when they would finally begin playing here in 1946. Now, getting up closer here, you can see the original dog pound section. This section was just basically a fence that ran right up close to the end zone there of the field. And they would carry this over to the new stadium, at least in name. And this became one of the most famous groups of fans in the NFL. And based on the scoreboard there, this is the configuration of how it would have looked like in the early 1990s during its later years as a stadium. Now, because this ballpark was so big, when there was an event like the World Series, they could really fill it. Now, 2 of the 5 largest crowds in World Series history were at this ballpark when crowds in excess of 80,000 people would fill these seats. So looking at it from another end, you have the baseball press boxes up here, and you have the dugouts, and the infield would be on part of the football field towards the end zone there. Now, the Indians would end their time at Cleveland Stadium after the 1993 season when they would move into the new Gateway Complex, which featured Jacobs Field and Gund Arena, which was the home of the Cavs. And Art Modell, who was the owner of the Browns, he had been offered a part of that project for a new stadium for the Browns. Not too many people talk about it, but it was turned down. He continued to have the Browns play at Municipal Stadium through the 1995 season when he would finally decide to move the Browns to Baltimore, which was kind of pointless because the city ended up getting another team which would begin play 3 years later in a new stadium, which is on the exact same spot that this stadium stood on. From 1996 to 1997, the stadium was torn down, and a portion of it would actually be dumped into Lake Erie to create an artificial reef. And shortly after, the existing stadium would be built on the spot. So I hope you enjoyed this video of Cleveland Municipal Stadium, the former home of the Indians and the Browns. Thank you so much for watching.